You guys sure Coach isn't gonna know if we've been drinking?
Brumley, you've seriously asked that at every bar. Are you sure Coach isn't gonna know if we've been drinking? What if he smelled my breath? We're drinking, man. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we are.
Okay? Yeah.
Cheers for the beers.
What is that? What is that on your lip?
I thought it was like a light, like a shadow on your lip, but is that a mustache?
Yeah.
Ugh. Sorry. Don't touch it. Don't. Ew. Stop. Yeah, that's a mustache. That's a mustache.
And that's a clip from Everybody Wants Some. It's the new Richard Linklater movie. Richard, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on. Is it 2 exclamation marks at the end of this?
Absolutely. 2 exclamation
Why?
points.
Why is it 2?
Ask Van Halen.
Oh, it's theirs. Okay, yeah.
It's their song.
So I was looking for the soundtrack this morning just to accompany the preparation for this interview, and all I got was Van Halen. I couldn't find the soundtrack that I wanted. But anyway, it's
Okay,
fine.
well,
Okay.
it's out there. We're even putting out a double vinyl album.
Well,
soundtrack album.
I would be disappointed if you didn't,
Yes.
because the loving attention to period detail is something that we'll that we'll get to. And if amps and decks and speakers are your thing, then this is the movie for you.
Yes.
Just explain where we are and what happens in this film, Richard.
Well, it's 1980, and a young man's kind of going off to college. So he arrives at college on a Thursday and, finds out he's living in these 2 houses with, 18 other guys or so. So these are now his roommates and teammates, too, because they're all baseball players. Although it's not in season, there's hardly any sports in the movie. But the movie captures kind of that competitive nature, the swagger of these young men, and this new kind of environment he has to adapt to. But it's really, there's like registration for college the next day, but it's really a long party before classes start on Monday. It's a long party weekend,
To what extent is this autobiographical?
Very personal, yeah, very autobiographical. That's where I found myself at the time. So it's kind of a recreation of a moment in time, which as time went on, I looked back and said, well, that was kind of interesting culturally too. The music and there was a moment in 1980. It kind of felt like the end of the 70s, but there's also, if you look closely, there's a Reagan-Bush sign. there's an election coming up.
It's a voter registration section. Yes.
Yeah. So times are going to be changing soon, and in my opinion, of course, not for the better. But you kind of take it for granted that people were sort of sailing along in the 70s. But there was a certain backlash in the 80s. But
could I just talk about the music as you brought it up? Did you sit down with a list and some turntables or a streaming service or something? Did you, because the music is there front and center, and right at the very beginning, it's a fantastic opening sequence where we see our main guy who's got a lovely old car. And he's got some amps in the back and speakers, and he's got his LP collection. That's right, kids. It's a box full of LPs.
LPs.
And we got My Sharona by the Knack played very, very loudly. That's great. And I'm imagining that you lovingly crafted every single track. Please tell me that's right.
Absolutely. I have a very personal relation with every single song in the movie. And I was that guy who, there's 2 kinds of people, I think. Ones who take all their music and their stereo system with them to college, and that was me. My car was full of, I had nice speakers, and I moved in my music.
It's the first thing that Jake, the main guy, he brings in his albums. That's what he's that's what he's bringing.
You're not going to leave them in the car to melt. It's hot, so that's the thing you're most protective of. Your clothes and all that. That's in another bag. He'll go back and get that. But yeah, the albums you most careful with.
Was it a tough selection choosing the track?
Not really. I had so much when I was at the script phase. I probably had over 200 songs, and then I shared about 100 with the cast as we started working on the movie together. And I think it ends up less than 50 tracks in the movie, but there was a deep well of music for this movie. Yeah. And it's all over the map. That was kind of one of the metaphors for me, the movie, the kind of the search for identity. They're at a disco one night, a country bar, a punk club. It felt like there was a lot of different, very viable, popular music was on the table at that moment,
The track that made me sort of sit up and take notice was Stiff Little Fingers.
There you go.
Oh, hang on a second. That's Stiff Little Fingers.
Stiff Little Fingers.
Amongst all kind of American rock radio classics, There's a little bit of Northern Ireland coming in there.
Absolutely. Great band.
Yeah. It's a period in time, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a long weekend. It's all these characters. It's fun. It's like a party. I always saw it as like, what makes a good party? It's music, energy, fun, humor, people, the right people, so it's kind of an experience.
Well, the right people. I mean, we spend a lot of time in this house. The macho jock culture, was it really that horrible?
Well, it's kind of funny in retrospect, but yeah, you get a lot
They're
of
pretty horrible,
testosterone. I was kind of thinking about like male competitiveness was on my mind. And in that world, if you have athletes at that level, you have to be kind of pathologically competitive to play a sport at that level. So they have that, but it's not just the sport. It kind of bleeds into everything they do. Never anything productive, like I'm going to have the best grades or never anything. It's always this dumb, stupid stuff that they really have to win at,
Well, as an illustration of that, just can you describe the kind of knuckle flicking game that they do? I mean, it's like they've got nothing else to do, so they might as well just
inflict some pain on each other.
Just explain that.
It's hard to explain. All I can say is it really happened. These kind of petty little competitions, but that was a real thing. A guy earlier I talked to, he asked me to give him a thump on the knuckle, and I popped him pretty hard. He was like,
but it's basically flicking with your fingers, flicking someone else's knuckles, which is
right. Who can draw blood first, or who quits? It's like a water torture. If you can hit the same spot over and over, you can kind of build up. I don't know. People are bored.
Were you that competitive guy?
Not in knuckle flicking. I was a very good ping pong player, good baseball player. Things. Yeah, a little bit. Not as crazy as those guys were. But I was the guy I had the music and the books, and I was more into other things too. But
yeah.
It's almost a cultural anthropological look at the extremes of this, but it's funny.
And because you don't strike me as a competitive filmmaker.
I'm not.
So did you kind of lose whatever competitiveness you had? Did it kind of, because you dropped out because there was a medical condition which meant that you couldn't carry on? But
right.
Is that where you kind of parked all that competitiveness?
Exactly, and it bubbles up every now and then. Like if I end up in a ping pong table tennis game, or I can get kind of I see it in myself, but it's strictly in the arena of sports. I don't feel competitiveness really in any other element of my life, which is I think that's a safe place for it. In like sports and games, that's kind of fun. But I was so happy to get into the arena of the arts where you could still bring that focus and intensity you might as an athlete, but it wasn't competitive. Mm. It was just all about doing your best and kind of being, actualizing what you're trying to do. And I never felt that it was competitive. It was all about self,
We mentioned the music and the turntables and the speakers and the amps, and I did catch myself a couple of times going, "There's a nice turntable. Is that a Garrard? I'm not quite sure. I think I had an amp a bit like that."
Yeah.
But I imagine when you because this is a young cast by and large, we haven't seen. The thing is, I wasn't aware of most of these these actors before. This must have been like ancient history.
Yeah, they were not anywhere near being born at the point that we're depicting in the movie, but they jumped in. They had a great time. They really, I think it's fun to see actors dial in on their characters, and in this case, it's wardrobe, it's hair, it's the mustache. It's they find their characters within the piece, and all that stuff really helps. When you're doing a period film, it's kind of magical. It feels like you're kind of making something out of nothing in a way.
And were you able to say, no, it was like this? I remember, because I think you got some of your old teammates from college coming in saying, no, you've got that wrong. Here's how it went.
I was very good at that. They started calling me Rickopedia because I was like, no, that handshake came in later. That I knew every little bit. I was like, no, they would come with something. I was like, no, we didn't no bro hugs. You know, you're the huggy generation. We didn't do that. You may high five, some kind of handshake, but not
Make someone's knuckles bleed, that kind of thing. That's what we did.
It was like
back in those days. And do we see this as a follow-up to Dazed and Confused? I mean, is that how you were seeing it?
Yeah, I brought that on myself by kind of admitting it early on that it's sort of a spiritual sequel. It kind of connects those. That was my high school. This is my college. And it was as if one guy in Dazed went off to college. It would be 4 years later if the young guy in Dazed, Mitch. So that's kind of the connection.
I have some listeners' questions for you, Richard, here. Niels Astrand, this is from our Facebook page. It's been said that most storytellers only ever essentially do two things. They write about their own lives, or they try to retell the stories that they loved as a child. What would you say was the story that you loved, novel, film, play, that most affected you during your childhood?
Wow, one story? I think watching 2001, strangely, was kind of my most profound experience of childhood. Watching it in the day, you know, I was like 7 years old or something, but I remember that being a complete mind blower. I don't think any of that reflects in anything I've done personally. You don't see it. Although
yet.
I am...
Not yet.
Not yet, but I'm actually working on a movie about the first moon landing, you know, what it was like to be a kid during the space age. You know, it's something I want to do.
Is that your next film?
It's not my next film, but it's something I've been working on a while.
George Kowalik asks, are we to expect another Before film in 6 years? And would you ever consider revisiting boyhood characters in the manner of the Before films?
I don't know. You know, those are two just complete blanks in my mind. I have no idea. It's too soon on both of them. The Before films, we always say it takes us 5 years just to recover. So I think we're only in our fourth year. So give me another year before we even have maybe an idea of what they would be doing. If we waited the same 9 years, they would be 50. So we're not there yet. So.
Rory Hodgson, you've had a lot of success working outside the Hollywood system, basing yourself in Austin. We've always heard how mid-budget movies are dying out, how it's either tiny budgets or massive budgets. Is that where the future of cinema is, finding a film community outside of Hollywood?
Well, I think the future of film's kind of where you make it. You know, films are always going to come from everywhere. You know, we have this need to make movies, I think. There is some truth to that there's not this mid-range that used to have kind of adult kind of content. It's huge and micro. So, although my movie is probably in that mid-range, you know, it's still a low-budget film, but bigger than micro. So, I guess I'm lucky that way that I was able to get this film made. But always a challenge. There's no one way. You know, it's always tough.
I wonder if one of the most pleasing films about this new movie, Richard, is the ensemble version of Rapper's Delight, which will send everybody from the movie theater with a big smile on their face.
I hope so. I hope so. I was in that car, you know, singing along to Rapper's Delight, and you know, and I think that typifies this era. You know, that there was actually something very new happening right in front of you. But what you do at the time, you just go with it. You have fun with it, and you know, history will tell you, oh, that was an interesting cultural moment. There was new stuff being born right in front of you. But at the time, it was just a fun thing you ran with, you know.
The movie is Everybody Wants Some. Richard Linklater, we appreciate you talking to us. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, good seeing you.